Imagine you're standing in a factory near Wrocław in late 2025. The assembly lines are humming. Robots are welding battery packs for electric cars that will soon roll out across Europe. The air smells like hot metal and possibility. Just a few years ago, this site was farmland. Literally farmland. Now it's pumping out billions in value, employing thousands of workers earning wages that would have been unthinkable a decade ago. And here's the part that should make you uncomfortable. 500 kilometers west in Germany, similar plants are shutting down. Factories that have stood for 60 years are going dark. In France, middle-class wages are being squeezed by a tax system so aggressive it makes feudalism look reasonable. But here, in Poland, unemployment is scraping historic lows. Real wages are surging, and foreign giants like Intel, LG, and BMW can't invest fast enough. We've been told for decades that Western Europe would always lead the continent. Germany, the industrial titan with its precision engineering and unshakable manufacturing base. France, the sophisticated powerhouse with its luxury brands and nuclear energy. These were the grown-ups of Europe. Poland? Poland was the scrappy kid from the Eastern Bloc who got lucky joining the EU. A charity case, a place where Western companies built cheap factories to save on labor costs. But right now, in late 2025, something impossible is happening. Poland, the post-communist underdog that joined the European Union just 21 years ago, is quietly overtaking them. GDP growth hovering around 3 to 4%, while Germany stagnates at 0 and France limps along at barely 1%. Record foreign investment pouring in month after month. A manufacturing boom in electric vehicles and batteries that's making Warsaw the new Detroit of Europe, except unlike Detroit, it's not dying, it's exploding. Looking at the numbers, you have to ask a terrifying question for the old guard. What if they got it wrong? What if while Brussels and Berlin were busy with green transitions that accidentally crippled their industries and tax systems that crushed entrepreneurial ambition, Poland was quietly building the only economy in Europe actually ready for the 21st century? Today, we're diving deep into Poland's surprising rise. This is the story of how a country that was literally communist 35 years ago is now eating the lunch of empires that have dominated Europe for centuries. Welcome to the other side of Europe's economic story. 1. The Great Convergence. From communist backwater to trillion-dollar powerhouse. To understand why Poland is surging while its neighbors are choking, you have to go back to 1989. The Berlin Wall falls, communism collapses, and Poland is absolutely broke. Hyperinflation is running over 500%. The factories are obsolete Soviet-era rust buckets. Shelves and stores are empty. GDP per capita is a tiny fraction of Germany's. The average Polish worker earns less in a month than a German earns in a week. This is a country on its knees, and the smart money is betting it stays there. But then, something unexpected happens. Poland implements what economists call shock therapy. The government, led by reformers who actually understood free markets, did something radical. They privatized everything. State-owned industries were sold off or shut down. Price controls were eliminated overnight. The currency was stabilized. Foreign investment was welcomed with open arms. It was brutal. Unemployment spiked. People lost jobs that had been guaranteed under communism. But unlike Russia, which botched its transition and descended into oligarchic chaos, Poland stuck with the plan. And then came the golden ticket. European Union accession in 2004. Poland joined the club and the floodgates opened. Billions of euros in structural funds poured in. Roads were built from scratch. Ports were expanded. Factories rose where there had been fields. Young Poles who had been fleeing to London and Dublin started seeing opportunities at home. And critically, Poland had something that Western Europe was losing. Hunger, ambition, a willingness to work hard because the alternative, the memory of communism, was still fresh. Fast forward to late 2025, Poland's nominal GDP has surpassed $900 billion and is on track to hit $1 trillion soon. That puts it in the global top 20, ahead of countries like Switzerland and Sweden. Let that sink in. A country that was a joke in 1990 is now richer in absolute terms than Switzerland. Average annual growth since EU accession? Nearly 4%, the highest in Europe. While Germany averaged under 1.5% and France limped along at around 1.2%, Poland compounded relentlessly year after year after year. The result of this compounding is visible everywhere. GDP per capita, adjusted for purchasing power, is now over 80% of the EU average. In 2004, it was 40%. Real wages have risen by double digits in recent years. And in 2024 and 2025, while Germany actually shrank and France barely grew, Poland posted 2.9 to 3.2% growth, driven by domestic consumption and investment. Western economists called it the Polish miracle. But it's not a miracle. Miracles are random acts of divine intervention. This was smart policy meeting perfect geography and a population willing to grind. And the best part? They're just getting started. They're brave. 2. The logistics masterstroke, turning geography into gold. Let's talk about something boring that's actually the secret to everything. Infrastructure. Drive across Poland today and you'll understand why this country is eating everyone's lunch. You'll see massive highways cutting through forests and farmland. New rail lines connecting cities that used to take 6 hours by car and now take 2 hours by train. Ports expanding at a pace that makes Western Europe look asleep at the wheel. This isn't an accident. This is a country that looked at a map and realized it had won the geographic lottery. Poland sits smack in the middle of Europe. It's the natural bridge between the wealthy West and the emerging East. It's the link between the industrial North and the agricultural South. Every truck carrying goods from Germany to Ukraine drives through Poland. Every train moving container freight from China's Belt and Road to Rotterdam passes through Polish territory. For centuries, this geography was a curse. Poland was the highway that invading armies marched down. But in the age of global trade, it's a gold mine. And Poland isn't just sitting on this advantage, they're building on it aggressively. The crown jewel of this strategy is the Centralny Port Komunikacyjny, the CPK. This is a $34 billion mega hub being built 40 kilometers from Warsaw. We're not talking about a simple airport expansion. This is a vision of the future. A brand new airport designed to handle 40 to 100 million passengers annually. High-speed rail lines radiating out like spokes on a wheel, slashing travel time from Warsaw to Wrocław to under 2 hours. Integrated cargo cities where goods can be transferred from plane to train to truck without ever leaving the complex. Construction is ramping up in 2025. Full operation is planned for 2032. When it's done, Poland will be the logistical keystone of Central Europe. But the CPK is just the headline. There's also the 3 Seas initiative, which is Poland's brainchild. This is a massive infrastructure network linking the Baltic Sea in the north, the Black Sea in the east, and the Adriatic Sea in the south. It's designed to break the old east-west trade routes that run through Germany and create new north-south corridors. Billions of euros in EU and US-backed projects are pouring into roads, rails, and pipelines. The result? Polish ports like Gdansk have tripled their capacity. They're handling Ukrainian aid shipments, rerouted trade bypassing Russia, and becoming the go-to hubs for companies that want to avoid the congestion and cost of German ports. While German supply chains choked during the energy crisis, while French infrastructure aged and decayed, Poland was laying asphalt and steel. They were building the physical backbone of a modern economy. And now, companies are noticing. When Intel decided to build a $4.6 billion chip fabrication plant in Europe, they chose Poland. When LG needed a site for the largest battery factory on the continent, they chose Poland. Why? Because logistics is destiny. If you can move goods faster, cheaper, and more reliably than your competitors, you win. Poland figured this out, and they're winning. Let me know in the comments. Is massive infrastructure the real secret to growth, or is Poland just in the right place at the right time? I want to hear your take. 3. The demographic dividend. A young workforce while Europe ages. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, or rather, the missing elephant. Europe is dying, literally. The birth rates across Western Europe are catastrophic. Germany's fertility rate is around 1.4 children per woman. France is at 1.6. Italy is at 1.2. You need 2.1 just to maintain the population. Every country in Western Europe is facing a demographic collapse. Fewer workers, more retirees, welfare states that were designed for young populations now being crushed by the weight of elderly care. Germany's median age is 47. Nearly half the population is older than that. France is similar. These are countries with aging workforces, and an aging workforce is a stagnant workforce. Older workers don't start businesses. They don't work night shifts. They don't move across the country for a new job. They're thinking about retirement, not ambition. And the political consequences of this aging are brutal. These countries are paralyzed by the need to protect pensions and health care for the elderly, even as it bankrupts the young. Poland has low fertility too. It's hovering around 1.1 to 1.3. On paper, they should be facing the same crisis. But here's the difference. Poland has a secret weapon. Immigration that works. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, millions of Ukrainians fled west. And where did they go? Poland. Within months, Poland absorbed over 2 million Ukrainian refugees. And unlike the migration crises in Germany or France, which sparked political backlash and riots, the Ukrainian migration into Poland was relatively smooth. Why? Because Ukrainians and Poles share a similar language root, a similar culture, and a similar work ethic. Ukrainians arrived, and within weeks they were working. In factories, in logistics, in construction. They filled the labor gaps without sparking the identity crises that paralyzed Western Europe. The result? Poland's unemployment rate is hovering around 3 to 5%. That's full employment. Factories are begging for workers, wages are booming, with real wage growth hitting 9 to 10% recently. Compare that to France, where wages are compressed by sky-high taxes, or Germany, where aging plants are closing because they can't staff the shifts. Poland's workforce is younger, hungrier, and cheaper. The median age is around 42, 5 years younger than Germany. That might not sound like much, but in demographic terms, it's the difference between growth and stagnation. And Poland isn't leaving this to chance. They've introduced aggressive family incentives. A program called Family 500 Plus gives parents 500 zloty per month for every child after the first. It's not fully reversing the fertility decline, but combined with immigration, it's keeping the labor force abundant. And an abundant labor force is the foundation of manufacturing growth. You can't run a 24-hour factory if you don't have workers willing to work the night shift. Germany can't, France can't, Poland can. Cheers. 4. The U.S. alliance trump card. Military might meets economic muscle. For years, Poland was Europe's black sheep. Brussels scolded them over rule of law. The European Commission withheld funds because of judicial reforms. Western media portrayed Poland as sliding toward authoritarianism. But then, geopolitics flipped the script in a way that nobody saw coming. Russia invaded Ukraine. And suddenly, Poland wasn't the problematic child. Poland was the front line. Poland was the indispensable ally. Poland immediately ramped up defense spending to over 4% of GDP. That's the highest in NATO, higher even than the United States. They bought American F-35 fighter jets. They ordered Abrams tanks. They signed deals for Patriot missile systems. They became the U.S. military's best friend in Europe. This wasn't just about security, this was about money. American defense contractors flooded into Poland, joint ventures, training facilities, logistics hubs. Poland positioned itself as the arsenal of Eastern Europe. But the real genius move was the 3 Cs initiative. This isn't just an infrastructure plan, it's a geopolitical alliance. It's a US-backed counter to Chinese belt and road influence and Russian energy dependence. 12 countries from the Baltic to the Adriatic, coordinating investments in transport, energy, and digital infrastructure. The United States loves this because it reduces European reliance on China and Russia. And Poland is the leader of the pack. They're the ones convening the summits, securing the funding, and building the projects. Energy? Poland was one of the first European countries to ditch Russian gas. They built LNG import terminals on the Baltic coast. They constructed the Baltic Pipe, a pipeline bringing natural gas from Norway. They signed long-term contracts with American LNG exporters. When the rest of Europe was panicking about energy security in 2022, Poland was already diversified, and they're doubling down. They're planning to build 6 nuclear reactors using American, French, or Korean technology. These will come online in the 2030s and provide stable, clean baseload power for decades. This U.S. alliance brings what economists call a security premium. Investors look at Poland and see a stable, NATO-protected country with American military presence. They see a government that is aggressively pro-business and pro-America. And they see a country that's not going to get bullied by Russia. The result, record foreign direct investment, Intel's $4.6 billion chip plant, LG's massive battery gigafactory, Northvolt's expansion. These aren't accidents. These are companies betting that Poland is the safest place to build in a dangerous region. While Germany deindustrializes because of energy costs and France suffocates under its own bureaucracy, Poland becomes the near-shoring haven for American and European firms that want to be close to markets but far from chaos. The U.S. alliance isn't just about tanks and jets. It's about trust. And right now, American companies trust Poland more than they trust Germany. 5. The battery superpower, EVs, and green tech where the West failed. Forget old-school automotive. Forget combustion engines and the legacy manufacturers struggling to adapt. Poland is the new heart of Europe's electric vehicle revolution. And they did it by being pragmatic instead of ideological. Let me give you a number. Poland is now the world's 2nd largest producer of lithium-ion batteries, behind only China. Think about that. A country that was communist 35 years ago is now outproducing Germany, Japan, and the United States in the technology that will power the next century of transportation. How did this happen? One name, LG Energy Solution. Their gigafactory in Wrocław is Europe's largest battery production facility. Current capacity is over 60 gigawatt hours annually. Planned expansion will take it past 100 gigawatt hours. For context, that's enough to power over 1 million electric vehicles per year. But LG isn't alone. Northvolt, the Swedish battery startup, is building plants in Poland. Umicore, the Belgian materials company, has a massive cathode production facility in Nysa. Mercedes is building a battery assembly plant. SK Innovation has a plant. CATL, the Chinese giant, is eyeing expansion. Why is everyone choosing Poland? 3 reasons: labor, incentives, and location. Polish workers are skilled, educated, and cost 30 to 50% less than German workers. The government offers tax breaks, grants, and free land through the Polish Investment Zone program, and the location is perfect. If you're building batteries in Poland, you're a 3-hour truck ride from BMW in Munich, Volkswagen in Wolfsburg, and Stellantis plants scattered across Europe. The entire European auto industry is within easy reach, and the numbers prove it works. Battery exports from Poland hit over 12 billion euros in 2024 and are projected to surpass 15 billion in 2025. That's not components, that's finished battery packs ready to install. Poland is literally powering the German automotive industry. BMW, Volkswagen, Audi, they're all buying Polish batteries because German energy costs made domestic production uncompetitive. The irony is delicious. Germany's green energy transition made energy so expensive that the greenest part of the car, the battery, has to be made somewhere else. But Poland isn't stopping at batteries. Semiconductors. Intel chose Poland for a $4.6 billion advanced chip packaging facility. This will be one of the most sophisticated semiconductor operations in Europe. It's not a coincidence. Poland offers cheap energy, skilled labor, and a government that doesn't guilt-trip you for using electricity. Poland is betting on the future industries, not clinging to the past, and that bet is paying off in billions of euros of exports and hundreds of thousands of high-paying jobs. Structure 6. Pragmatic energy, cheap power without the guilt trip. Let's talk about the elephant that Germany refuses to acknowledge. Energy. Specifically, cheap, reliable energy. Germany spent over $500 billion on the Energiewende, the energy transition. They shut down their nuclear plants. They built wind and solar farms across the country. They subsidized green energy to the point of absurdity. And what did they get? The highest electricity prices in the developed world. Industrial energy costs in Germany are now 3 to 4 times higher than in the United States. Factories are fleeing. Chemical plants are closing. BASF, the largest chemical company on earth, is moving production to China. Poland watched this disaster and learned exactly what not to do. Poland's energy strategy can be summed up in one word: pragmatism. When Russia cut off gas supplies in 2022, Poland didn't panic because they had already diversified. They built 2 massive LNG import terminals on the Baltic coast. They constructed the Baltic Pipe, delivering Norwegian gas directly to Poland, bypassing Russian territory. They signed long-term contracts with American LNG exporters, locking in stable supply for decades. But here's the controversial part. Poland didn't shut down its coal plants. Poland still generates a significant portion of its electricity from coal. And yes, environmentalists scream about this. Brussels lectures them. Greta Thunberg probably has a poster of Poland with a sad face. But you know what? Polish electricity is cheap. Household bills are regulated and kept low. Industrial energy costs are competitive. And the lights stay on. Always. Because here's the dirty secret of renewable energy that nobody wants to say out loud. Wind and solar are intermittent. The wind doesn't blow on demand. The sun doesn't shine at night. If you shut down your coal and nuclear before you have reliable storage or alternative baseload, you get blackouts. Germany nearly had rolling blackouts in the winter of 2022. France had to restart old coal plants. Poland just kept the lights on. And Poland isn't anti-green. They're just anti-stupid. They're planning 6 nuclear reactors to come online in the 2030s. These will provide clean, stable baseload power for 50 years. They're expanding wind farms in the Baltic Sea. They're investing in solar. But they're doing it without crippling their economy in the process. They're keeping coal as a bridge, not as a destination. The result? Chinese battery factories, which consume absolutely massive amounts of electricity, chose Poland over Germany. Intel's chip plant, which needs stable 24/7 power, chose Poland. These are trillion-dollar industries, and they're going where the power is cheap and reliable. Poland's message to industry is simple: we won't lecture you. We'll just keep the lights on and the prices low. And in a competitive global economy, that message wins. Juror stars. 7. Business-friendly policies. Low taxes, high incentives, 0 apologies. Let's talk about what it actually costs to do business in Europe. France is a nightmare. The total tax burden, when you add up corporate income tax, social charges, payroll taxes, and VAT, can hit 45 to 48%. Entrepreneurs in France don't dream about building the next big thing. They dream about moving to London or Dubai. Germany is better on taxes, but the bureaucracy is suffocating. It takes months to get permits. The labor laws make it nearly impossible to fire underperforming workers. Starting a business in Germany feels like navigating a Kafka novel. Poland looked at this dysfunction and went the opposite direction. The corporate income tax rate is 19%. For small and medium enterprises, it's 9%. But that's just the headline. The real magic is in the incentives. Poland created something called the Polish Investment Zone. This isn't a geographic zone. It's a policy framework that allows companies anywhere in Poland to apply for tax exemptions that can last up to 15 years. You're building a factory? Tax exempt. You're doing R&D? Tax exempt. You're creating jobs in a struggling region? Tax exempt. They also introduced the IP box, a regime that taxes income from intellectual property at just 5%. If you're a tech company developing software or patents, Poland is a tax haven. On top of this, billions of euros in EU structural funds are available as grants, not loans, for companies willing to invest in Poland. You can get free money to build your factory and then pay almost no taxes on the profits. This isn't corporate welfare. This is Poland aggressively competing for capital in a global market. And it's working. Foreign direct investment into Poland hit record highs in 2023 and 2024. Companies are relocating entire supply chains, not just manufacturing, but R&D centers, logistics hubs, and regional headquarters. Why? Because Poland makes it easy. The government sees businesses as partners, not enemies. There's no guilt about profit, no lectures about social responsibility. Just a simple deal. You bring jobs and investment. We give you infrastructure and low taxes. Compare this to France, where the government views successful businesses with suspicion and taxes them punitively. Or Germany, where green ideology has made entire industries uncompetitive. Poland's approach is unashamedly capitalist. And in a world where capital is mobile and can go anywhere, Poland is the place it's choosing to go. 8. The full employment miracle. When everyone who wants a job has one. There's a number that tells you everything you need to know about whether an economy is working for ordinary people. Unemployment. Not the headline GDP growth, not the stock market. Unemployment. Because if people have jobs, they have dignity, they have income, they have hope for the future. And right now, Poland's unemployment rate is hovering around 3%. That's the lowest in the European Union. That's functionally full employment. Let me put that in context. In the year 2000, Poland's unemployment rate was over 20%. 1 in 5 workers couldn't find a job. The economy was still transitioning from communism. Factories were closing. The future looked bleak. Fast forward 25 years, and the transformation is staggering. Today, factories can't find enough workers. Warehouses are competing for staff. Wages are rising because labor is scarce, not because the government mandated it. And these aren't just any jobs. Real wages, adjusted for inflation, have been surging. After a brutal bout of inflation in 2022 and 2023, real wage growth bounced back hard, hitting 9 to 10% in 2024 and 2025. Polish workers are feeling richer. They're buying cars. They're buying homes. They're going on vacations. This creates a virtuous cycle. When consumers have money, they spend it. When they spend it, businesses grow. When businesses grow, they hire more workers. The economy feeds itself. Compare this to Spain, where youth unemployment is over 25%. Compare it to France, where middle-class wages have been squeezed so hard by taxes that people are rioting. Compare it to Italy, where young people have given up and moved abroad. Poland is the opposite. Young Poles are staying, they're working, they're building lives. This full employment isn't an accident. It's the result of every policy we've talked about so far. The infrastructure that created logistics jobs, the manufacturing boom that created factory jobs, the low taxes that allowed businesses to hire, the Ukrainian immigration that filled gaps without displacing locals. All of it came together to create an economy where if you want to work, you can work. And that might sound basic, but in modern Europe, it's a miracle. Verse 9. The EU funds bonanza. Trillions in free money actually spent well. Let's talk about something that makes Western Europeans uncomfortable. Poland has been a massive net recipient of EU funds. Since joining in 2004, Poland has received hundreds of billions of euros in cohesion funds, agricultural subsidies, and infrastructure grants. Critics in Germany and the Netherlands complain that they're subsidizing Poland, and they're right, they are. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Poland actually used the money well. Drive across Germany and you'll see infrastructure that was built in the 1970s and hasn't been updated. Bridges that are crumbling, train lines that are slow, airports that are outdated. Germany received EU funds too, but they spent it on social programs, pensions, and bureaucracy. Poland spent it on roads, rails, and ports. They built things, tangible, productive things that generate returns. The A1 highway running the length of Poland. EU funded the expansion of Gdansk port. EU funded the high-speed rail network. EU funded. These aren't vanity projects. These are the arteries of a modern economy. And now that they're built, they're generating tax revenue, attracting investment, and paying dividends for decades. And the money keeps flowing. The EU Recovery Fund, launched after COVID, is unlocking tens of billions more for Poland. There are tensions because Brussels wants to tie the funds to rule of law conditions, but the money is still coming. And Poland is still building. Critics call it unfair. But the reality is that Poland took free money and turned it into productive assets. That's not corruption. That's competence. Western Europe should be asking itself a painful question. If Poland can take EU funds and build a modern economy, why couldn't Greece? Why couldn't Italy? Why couldn't Spain? The answer is uncomfortable, because Poland wanted to grow, the others wanted to maintain. The Troja Sergeant 10. The verdict. Is Poland the laboratory of Europe's future? So let's come back to the original question. Why is Poland rising while Germany and France decline? Is it luck? Is it geography? Is it timing? The answer is no, it's strategy. It's a deliberate set of choices made by a government that understood the world was changing and positioned the country to win. Poland chose pragmatic energy over ideological purity. They kept the coal plants running while Germany froze in the dark. They chose bold infrastructure over bureaucratic caution. They built highways and airports while France debated endlessly. They chose U.S. alignment over European ambivalence. They picked a side, the winning side, and committed fully. They chose low taxes and business incentives over punitive redistribution. They attracted capital while France drove it away. Are there problems? Of course. Corruption is real. The judiciary battles with Brussels are real. The long-term demographic decline is real. But here's the thing. Every country has problems. The question is whether the country is growing despite the problems or shrinking because of them. Poland is growing. And it's growing fast. If Poland's gamble succeeds, and right now it looks like it is, it will prove something that terrifies the Brussels elite. It will prove that convergence is possible and fast. It will prove that national sovereignty pays better dividends than European centralization. It will prove that pragmatism beats purity. And most dangerously for the old guard, it will prove that the Western European model, the model of high taxes, green ideology, and welfare states, isn't the only path to prosperity. In fact, it might not even be a path to prosperity at all. Poland is the laboratory, and the experiment is working. While Germany's factories close and France's middle class revolts, Poland is building battery plants and airports. While Western Europe ages into irrelevance, Poland is young and hungry. While the old powers cling to past glories, Poland is writing the future. So where do you stand? Are you Team Old Europe, believing that values and social models matter even if they cost economic growth? Or are you Team Poland, believing that in a cold, competitive world, the only thing that matters is keeping the factories running and the people working? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. Thanks for watching. Next up, we're diving into why one tiny Baltic state might be the biggest surprise of all. See you there.